Hello, my name is Bill. In this video I'll continue with the shelf tour. So it's more nonfiction books for Nonfiction November. And after this I'll return to doing analog magazine videos and return to doing these shelves over here, which are mostly fiction. The Stars in Their Course by Isaac Asimov. So it's probably in the 70s I read this one. Copyright 1969-1970. All essays in this volume appeared in the Magazine of Fantasy and Science Fiction between May 1969 and September 1970. So this is the first British edition by White Lion Publishers, 1974. I don't remember any of the essays. It's been a few years. There's astronomy, physics, chemistry, sociology. Disturbing the Universe by Freeman Dyson. So it was about 40 years ago I read this one. So you may have heard of Freeman Dyson, or Dyson spheres, which is one of Freeman Dyson's thought experiments. So this is 1979. First Harper Colophon edition, 1981. So sometime after 1981 I read this. So part in here where he was working with the Royal Air Force in Second World War. So what one of the problems he had to solve was how can the crew bail out of the plane before it crashes when the hatch is not big enough to take a man with a parachute on his back. And sometime later after the war he goes to visit his family, goes to visit his wife's parents, and they go look at the bomb crater in the backyard. So this is in Germany. So he said it was difficult to explain to the kids why his friends were dropping bombs on their mother's house. So book probably has something about the Orion project where Freeman Dyson was working on making a starship with using nuclear explosions for propulsion, but the banning of nuclear explosions in the atmosphere put an end to that project. There is a book by George Dyson called The Starship and the Canoe that talks about the Orion project that his father was working on and the canoes that he was building. So George Dyson was on the coast making canoes, and his father was trying to build starships. Stephen Hawking's Universe, an introduction to the most remarkable scientist of our time, by John Boslough. So I probably read this back in the 80s. It's always possible it's one of the books I didn't get to, but I read many books about Stephen Hawking. So this one's 1985. Remarkable physicist from Galileo to Yukawa, by Ioan James. I had to make sure that was an I there. So this is 2004. So the 250 years from the second half of the 17th century saw the birth of modern physics and its growth into one of the most successful of all the sciences. In this book, the reader will find the lives of 50 of the most remarkable physicists from that era described in brief biographies. All the individuals profiled have made important contributions to physics, either through their ideas, through their teachings, or in other ways. The emphasis is on the varied life stories, not on the details of their achievement. But when read in sequence, the biographies, which are organized chronologically, convey in human terms something of the way in which physics was created. Scientific and mathematical detail is kept to a minimum, so that the reader who is interested in physics but perhaps lacks the background to follow technical accounts will find this collection an inviting and easy path through the subject's modern development. Remarkable Physicist is a companion volume to the same author's Remarkable Mathematicians, published in 2002. In the Light of Science, Our Ancient Quest for Knowledge and the Measure of Modern Physics, by Demetris Nicolaides. This unique approach to the history of science reveals the important link between the ancient past and the present scientific endeavor to understand the universe. Physicist Demetris Nicolaides examines the epochal shift in thinking that led pre-Socratic philosophers of the 6th and 5th centuries BCE to abandon the prevailing mythologies of the age and for the first time to analyze the natural world in terms of impersonal, rationally understood principles in the light of science is a remarkable chronicle of the many ways that the discoveries of long ago continue to inspire scientists in our own era. And this book was published 2014. Dreamer of Dune, the biography of Frank Herbert by Brian Herbert. So this copyright 2003. First paperback edition, July 2004. So there's a section of photos in here. Just show you a few of them. Brian and Frank in 1985. Quantum Mechanics and Experience by David Z. Albert. This is 1985. Oh, look in the wrong place. 1992. 1985 is for an excerpt that's in here. The more science tells us about the world, the stranger it looks. Ever since physics first penetrated the atom early in this century, what is found there has stood as a radical and unanswered challenge to many of our most cherished conceptions of nature. It has literally been called into question since then whether or not there are always objective matters of fact about the whereabouts of subatomic particles or about the locations of tables and chairs or even about the very contents of our thoughts. A new kind of uncertainty has become a principle of science. This book is an original and provocative investigation of that challenge, as well as a novel attempt at writing about science in a style that is simultaneously elementary and deep. It is a lucid and self-contained introduction to the foundations of quantum mechanics, accessible to anyone with a high school mathematics education, and at the same time, a rigorous discussion of the most important recent advances in our understanding of that subject, some of which are due to the author himself. For Albert, the problem of measurement is the central problem of quantum mechanics, and he devotes particular attention to various attempts to solve it, including theories of the collapse of the wave function, hidden variable theories, and multiple universe theories. The engaging style and the extraordinary clarity of this book will make it a welcome contribution to a field that has typically appeared a great deal more difficult and obscure than Albert shows it to be. So David said Albert is professor of philosophy at Columbia University. I've seen somewhere physicists commented that modern physics is too complex for philosophers. Mathematics is too technical for a typical philosopher. Genghis Khan and the quest for God. How the world's greatest conqueror gave us religious freedom, by Jack Weatherford. So this one's 2016. Throughout history, the world's greatest conquerors have made their mark not just on the battlefield, but in the societies they have transformed. Genghis Khan conquered by arms and bravery, but he ruled by commerce and religion. Like many of history's most transformative leaders, he was both a warrior and a lawmaker. Few empire builders have been more ruthless or more successful. Genghis Khan lived at a time of great religious fervor, when monasteries were exploding throughout Christendom. Taoism and Buddhism were vying for new converts in China, and Islam was at its apogee as a world power. He fought in the Middle East and Afghanistan and struggled with many of the same problems we face today. How should one rein in religious fanatics? Can one compel people of rival faiths, driven by deep-seated hatred, to live together in peace? He went out on campaign with no more than 100,000 men. How did he manage to pacify millions? Jack Weatherford spent 18 years exploring areas of Mongolia closed until the fall of the Soviet Union, and researching the secret history of the Mongols, a long suppressed oral history of the creation of the Mongol Empire. He pored through archives and found groundbreaking evidence of Genghis Khan's influence on the founding fathers and his essential impact on Thomas Jefferson, who reproduced the language of his edicts in the Statute of the State of Virginia. As hard as it is to believe, we owe our doctrine of religious freedom in part to a distant nomad who forged the world's greatest empire in a trail of blood. Jack Weatherford. Press On, Further Adventures in the Good Life by General Chuck Yeager and Charles Learson. (1988). General Chuck Yeager is a born outdoorsman. From flying daredevil missions over Germany during World War II and cracking records as a test pilot to his annual trip into California's Sierra Mountains. He's always the restless adventurer in search of a new experience. In Press On, you'll roam the world with Chuck Yeager and go back with him to his West Virginia roots. Like Yeager, his record-breaking, best-selling autobiography Press On is chock full of Chuck Yeager's own brand of rugged individualism. He makes it clear that he always did and always will live life the way he wants to. Press On exemplifies this kind of living, full out and straight ahead. Every year, Chuck Yeager heads into the high mountains of the Sierras for 2 weeks of rigorous hiking in rough terrain. Chuck and his best friend Bud Anderson climb to an altitude of almost 14,000 feet, where they live off the land, fishing the icy lakes for golden trout, which they cook over a campfire and eat off old tin pie plates. This is the heart of Press On, getting back to the basics and living what Chuck Yeager calls the good life. Yeager calls Bud a fighter pilot, a world-class fisherman, and an all-around good guy. He tells how they met in training before World War II and remembers the heroic missions they flew together over Germany. Over the years, they have traveled to some of the most exotic places in the world in search of adventure, and they have found it from a close brush with death in a remote region of New Zealand to fly casting in Scotland, deer hunting in Texas, and catching a 267-pound Alaska halibut on a 40-pound test line. In Press On, we also hear from Yeager's wife, Glamorous Glennis, the namesake of both the P-51 Mustang that Chuck flew in World War II dogfights and of the X-1 in which he broke the sound barrier in 1947. She tells of their wartime courtship. It's like we were raised for each other, and their enduring marriage for more than 40 years. They both talk about his role as an Air Force father. Glennis raised their 4 children almost single-handedly, and what their life is like today, finally settled down in Grass Valley, California, after years of being transferred all over the world. Now Chuck Yeager takes us back to his roots among the rough-edged, honest mountain folks of West Virginia. We meet his mother, who lived in a time and place where women had it all the responsibilities. He also remembers Grandpa Yeager, who taught young Chuck how to survive alone in the woods at the age of 8, and many others who influence his fields to this day. This wouldn't be Chuck Yeager's book without plenty of exhilarating stories from his days as a test pilot, when he and the other fiercely competitive flyers lived a life on the edge, pushing the limits of their machines, bodies, and souls all week, then exploding out of the base for raucous weekends of hard drinking, thrill-seeking, and travel. Now in his 60s, this self-proclaimed West Virginia hillbilly shows no signs of slowing down. He's equally at ease hanging out with his buddies at the local auto parts store in Grass Valley, or socializing at the White House. In an era of so few role models with guts and integrity, Chuck Yeager is truly an American hero. Press On continues the exciting adventures of the toughest flyboy of them all, out there getting the most out of the good life. Charles Learson is a senior writer at Newsweek, where he has written cover stories on a wide variety of subjects. So I discovered Chuck Yeager because of my interest in space technology and the aircraft that in the early days linked the new science of networks by Albert-Laslo, Barabasi. How everything is connected to everything else, and what it means for science, business, and everyday life. – 2002. It must be close to 20 years ago I read this one. It was a very interesting read. From a cocktail party to a terrorist cell, from an ancient bacteria to an international conglomerate, all are networks and all are part of a surprising scientific revolution. At the beginning of the 21st century, a maverick group of scientists is discovering that all networks have a deep underlying order and operate according to simple but powerful rules. This knowledge promises to shed light on the spread of fads and viruses, the robustness of ecosystems, the vulnerability of economies, even the future of democracy. Now, for the first time, a scientist whose own work has transformed the study of links and nodes takes us inside the unfolding network revolution. Albert-Laslo Barabasi traces the fascinating history of connected systems, beginning with Swiss mathematician Leonhard Euler's first forays into graph theory in the late 1700s, and the culminating in biologists' development of cancer drugs based on a new understanding of cellular networks. Combining narrative flair with sparkling insights, Barabasi introduces us to the myriad modern-day cartographers who are mapping networks in a wide range of scientific disciplines. Aided by powerful computers, these scientists are proving that social networks, corporations, and cells are more similar than they are different. Their discoveries are providing an important new perspective on the interconnected world around us. Linked reveals how Google came to be the Internet's most popular search engine, and how Vernon Jordan's social network affects the American economy as a whole. We find out what it would take to bring down a terrorist organization like Al-Qaeda, and why an obscure finding of Einstein's could change the way we look at the networks in our lives. Indeed, understanding the structure and behavior of networks will forever alter our world, allowing us to design the perfect business or stop a disease outbreak before it goes global. Engaging and authoritative, Linked provides an exciting preview of the next century in science. One more book. Pause for have a drink. The Day the Universe Changed by James Burke. I don't have the dust jacket anymore, so don't have a easy description of the book. Lots of pictures. So if you like picture books, (1985). Let's see what the preface has to say. You are what you know. 15th century Europeans knew that the sky was made of closed concentric crystal spheres, rotating around a central Earth and carrying the stars and planets. That knowledge structured everything they did and thought, because it told them the truth. Then Galileo's telescope changed the truth. As a result, 100 years later, everybody knew that the universe was open and infinite, working like a giant clock. Architecture, music, literature, science, economics, art, politics, everything changed, mirroring the new view created by the change in the knowledge. Today we live according to the latest version of how the universe functions. This view affects our behavior and thought, just as previous versions affected those who lived with them. Like the people of the past, we disregard phenomena which do not fit our view because they are wrong or outdated. Like our ancestors, we know the real truth. At any time in the past, people have held a view of the way the universe works, which was for them similarly definitive. Whether it was based on myths or research, and at any time that view they held was sooner or later altered by changes in the body of knowledge. This book examines some of those moments of change in order to show how the changes of view also generated major institutions or ways of thought which have since survived to some basic elements of modern life. Each chapter begins at the point where the view is about to shift. In the 11th century, before the extraordinary discoveries by the Spanish Crusaders and the Florentine economic boom of the 14th century, before a new way of painting took Columbus to America. In the strange memory world that existed before printing changed the meaning of fact, was 16th century gunnery developments that triggered the birth of modern science. In the early 18th century, when hot English summers brought the Industrial Revolution, at the battlefield surgery stations of the French Revolutionary armies, where people first became statistics. With the 19th century discovery of dinosaur fossils that led to the theory of evolution, with the electrical experiments of the 1820s, which heralded the end of scientific certainty. The last chapter examines the implications of this approach to knowledge and what it means. If all views at all times are valid, which is the right one? Is there any direction to the development of knowledge, or merely substitution of one form for another? If this is the case, then can there be any permanent and unchanging values or standards? Has the course of learning about the universe been, as science would claim, a logical and objective search for the truth? Or is each step taken for reasons related only to the theories of time? Do scientific criteria change with changing social priorities? If they do, why is science accorded its privileged position? If all research is theory-laden, contextually determined, is knowledge merely what we decide it should be? Is the universe what we discover it is, or what we say it is? If knowledge is an artifact, will we go on inventing it endlessly? And if so, is there no truth to seek? So I wonder what James Burke's background is. Sounds more like he's a philosopher and not a scientist. So that's all for this video. See you in the next one.